Hello, and welcome to Candidates, presented by the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies, otherwise known as APAICS. I'm your host, Madalene Mielke, President and CEO of APAICS. In Candidates, we highlight Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiian leaders and have candid conversations on what their unique backgrounds mean to them. We take a deep dive into our guests' accomplishments and ask questions to help listeners to manifest their own career journey and demystify the path to leadership. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome, everyone. This is Madalene Mielke, President and CEO of APAICS, the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies. And it is my pleasure to welcome Betsy Lin here with us today. She is a phenomenal individual, and I've had the great privilege of working with her, calling her my friend, and having her be someone who I can bounce ideas off, as well as hopefully one day we can actually be in the same place to go surfing together. So just as a quick background on Betsy, she has been working in electoral and advocacy politics for over 2 decades, either serving or running campaigns across the country. Most recently, she served as executive director to a nonprofit in the civic engagement field. And she also founded Breakwater Consulting, helping candidates, campaigns, and organizations. And she's just an all-around phenomenal person in the sense that she has a life outside of politics that includes hobbies. And she's also worked on so many different types of campaigns. And she's such a great role model for Asian American women, as well as all constituencies, because she's just done so much within public service and in campaign. So let's hear from Betsy. So Betsy,
hi.
You started out in Washington State.
I did.
I am so happy that you are my friend and willing to do this. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. And I'm really excited around the opportunity to talk with you to lift up the voices of Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiian communities across the country. I do want to do a quick shout out to you and to applaud your leadership of APAICS. I think you're bringing APAICS into a new direction with this podcast, and it's really great to watch both you and the organization grow in so many different ways under your leadership.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you. We have our little mutual club for each other in friendship. So thank you so much for joining us and for that shout out. I wanted to say, you started out in Washington State and you did work to basically, develop and support coordinating and identifying voters in the state's voter file. So that seems to be like a really big deal in the sense of most people who start out in politics usually want to work on a campaign or usually find some candidate that they are enthralled with, So how did you really get into politics and what really compelled you to do this work?
So really, it is not something that growing up the daughter of immigrants in Washington State, it's not really something that your parents want you to do. They really want you, as you know, probably pretty well yourself. They want you to be the good Asian. They want you to get great grades in school. You put your head down and study, go through college, get through maybe your second degree, and then go to law school or become a doctor or work in a job that is very financially stable and very solid. That's almost like the immigrant parent's dream overall. So I was that good Asian for the first part of my life. And then I fell into campaign politics by working at the Washington State Democratic Central Committee in downtown Seattle, and really started out entry level, answering the phones. And within 1 month, the technology director had quit. So I became the technology director with very little background, honestly, in everything having to do with networking computers to actually developing and helping to support the first ever electronic voter file database in Washington State. We can talk about what that looked like before voter files existed and what that looked like in terms of paper. And in many ways, that's very different to where we are now, which is a national voter file with easy access and an easy interface. But that didn't exist when I first started out in politics. So it was that first love of kind of like learning something new and having the dynamic work environment. I really liked working with people, and even, our 85-year-old twin volunteers who came in every 3 times a week really kind of touched my heart in terms of folks who were activists and wanted to make a difference, regardless of what that looked like, whether it was giving money or sitting and licking envelopes and putting stamps on bulk mail for hours on end. It was really great to see kind of the breadth and depth of people who wanted to make this country a better world. So I got into politics during that election cycle for the state party, worked on a couple of different coordinated campaigns, learned the technology piece, which was not easy. Although I do have to say it was easier in Washington State, growing up in the home of Microsoft. One of our biggest donors and biggest supporters was also one of the first employees and staff members of Microsoft. And so he actually just volunteered his time to teach me how to do certain things.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And from there, got recruited to go to a few different other states to do both voter file work and really support the field efforts around how you target and how you think about targeting and finding people from a macro to micro level.
Working in politics is never a stable job. It's probably one of the biggest concerns that Asian American parents have about having their kids do this line of work. And so you talked a little bit about being recruited into other campaigns, which I think is so important because a lot of times, you work on a campaign and then you're unemployed because of a campaign cycle. How do you get recruited? What do you think are the skill sets that people need to exhibit that allow you to get recruited?
That's right. And a lot of people will talk about working on campaigns as a pyramid. So on the bottom of the pyramid are tons and tons of people. It's field organizers, it's entry-level positions, it's folks who haven't done a campaign before who are interested in doing a campaign. And those are great places to start out. It's like from there that you climb, and you can very quickly climb the rung as long as you keep your head down, do your work, be a team player. There are 3 principles that I really see as incredibly important on understanding how to move up that rung. One is do whatever it takes within the letter of the law, of course, but do whatever it takes, even if it's not within your job description, to get whatever needs to get done. And I learned that very early on, and it was reiterated in a lot of different environments, including when I worked for SEIU in Southern California, where the now international executive president was the campaign manager. And we were holding an organizing meeting, and she didn't have a specific role except to be, the campaign manager that was there. And I saw her taking out the garbage because the garbage cans were overflowing, the trash was overflowing. And someone asked her, "Who are you? What do you do?" And it was one of the potential members, one of the healthcare workers that we were organizing. And she said, "I'm an organizer." And it was one of the most humble and values-driven things that I could imagine seeing. So, if the printer's out of paper, if the garbage needs to be taken out, if someone needs to just go run and grab some coffee or take 2 minutes out of their day to order the food for everyone there, just do it, because it makes everyone's world and life better. And it's a collective in terms of the campaign itself. I think the second thing is don't be afraid to speak up when there's something that you see, because campaign managers and folks who are running this know that with any mistake that happens in a campaign or the lack of resources that happen on a campaign, you're always running behind on money, you're running behind on volunteers, you're running behind on shifts, that you can make all of those things up in many ways, but you cannot make up time. And that is the one limited thing. So if that is your guiding principle around what that looks like, being able to speak up if you see something that is wrong or that could be done differently is incredibly helpful in that particular context. And I think the third is remembering to treat people as humans, and being kind goes a really, really long way towards the emotional intelligence that campaigns drive on. While there's the strategy around what you spend money on and what polling shows and how you're going to create a TV or radio ad or digital ad or what you're going to put up on your social media for the campaign, all of that doesn't matter as much as that does matter in terms of winning, but from a campaign perspective and from a people perspective, having the emotional intelligence to treat people and ask, "How is your day going?" makes a huge difference in terms of making sure that you're getting it from a campaign perspective.
So what do you think are the types of candidates or campaigns that you work on so that you can, find the right fit for you when you start to think about, I want to keep growing in a campaign, both in my portfolio of skills and also, being able to align your own values with the things that are embodied in those campaigns, whether in the candidate or in, whether it's a proposition that you're trying to work on. What's that formula you see in terms of advising young people when they want to further their campaign careers?
That's right. Well, I actually had the opportunity to work with the Blue Leadership Collaborative last year and have been working with them this year, which recruits and supports campaign managers of color and women and LGBTQIA candidates, which is pretty amazing. They're the campaign staffing side of diversifying the talent pool in campaigns. And it's been an amazing experience and inspirational in terms of the folks that are coming up nowadays in campaign management. And the advice that I give people there, the advice that I gave the team that I was working with last year, who were all running Virginia House of Delegates races, some were on a target list from the Republicans, and so clearly were facing different challenges than ones that were trying to build out more resources and still win the campaign for their particular candidates, and had different challenges throughout. Is number one, if I look back at the career that I've had so far, one of the things that stands out to me is I've had to work in environments where even on the Hill and in the Senate in particular, I could look around the room and I would be one of 20 women serving in that role as a chief of staff to a United States senator. And I would be one of 5 or 6, depending on what year it was, people of color serving as chief of staff in a body of 100. And that's not enough in terms of voices and in terms of representation, because I do believe that representation matters around putting a different perspective and making our democracy more representative of the communities that we represent and are here to serve and support and lift up and draw our strength from. And the opportunity to support women and people of color and underrepresented communities, whether it's through diversifying the talent pool or diversifying what elected officials look like and who wins, is very important to me. But I think how I got and how I'm able to pick and choose at this particular point is because I did some of the big races, is because I took the chances to move to North Dakota and work for an incumbent United States senator. It is because I was willing to jump on a plane when I was at the DSCC to bounce back and forth between 7 different Senate races and do whatever you needed to do to make the campaign run. In the North Carolina case, I needed to sit in Kay Hagan's sunroom and send out multiple press releases to announce her launch and help get her the resources that she needed at the front end before she had a campaign manager so that you could start out strong. So for me, that was the most important thing, the willingness to be able to jump on a plane, the willingness to do whatever you needed to get done, again, within reason, so that the campaign could thrive. I think that for folks that I advise now, whether it is first-time campaign managers looking for their second role, or it is candidates who are moving on to the next level of their career in public service and their desire to serve the people that they work with, is why do you want to do this? And what are your particular considerations? One of the campaign managers really wanted to stay in the DC, DMV area. And so the choices were a little bit different in terms of congressionals that she was looking at. Another one was looking to continue their career and really, I think, starting out from the question of where do you want to be in 5 years, as hokey as that may seem, and as no one is holding you to that, but where do you want to be in 5 years is a good exercise around what you should do next. If it is to run a committee, if it is to run a presidential, if it is something like the campaign trail, then I would go with campaigns that are going to be frontline, campaigns that are going to be super targeted, campaigns that are going to have a lot of resources, and you have a 50-50 chance of winning. Those are where you cut your teeth if you want to continue along in the campaign world. If you prioritize having a little more balance in your life, and I will say that was not me for 20 years, that you're going to make a different choice, which is where I am now, which is I get to pick and choose who I want to work with. And it is with people who are in underrepresented communities. And that's what's giving me my continued inspiration to continue to do this work.
So awesome. Such good advice in looking at, someone's career in this. I mean, no one ever goes to career fairs at colleges to say, hey, come work on a campaign because we have all these great benefits. I think it's definitely really about the experience. And I feel like working on campaigns has really helped to, organize my thoughts in regards to making decisions and how I make decisions, and that, career wise, whatever you choose is always going to be an experience that will help with your portfolio. I think also there has never been sort of a guidebook on a career ladder on, how to succeed and advance in campaigns. And so, the way you've laid it out, I think has just been so helpful for people to kind of visualize, the steps that they need to take if they want to continue working in senior leadership and in campaigns. We have a few minutes left. And what I really want to get to is, you mentioned balance, which is very hard in a campaign because we all know that you dedicate more hours than you ever think you would working on a campaign and, the candidate and all the things that go with it. So how did you manage to find your balance? And also in the sense of, you surf, I surf, we've never surfed together, which I think we have to remedy. And the other part too is like during this time period, I think, being able to give ourselves the time for mental health, wellness, and all the things that go with trying to be resilient when you're in a campaign. How do you find your hobbies and how do you find the things that give you, mental rest in the sense that you've put something away from work and you can concentrate on the things that, give you joy? What tips do you have for people on that?
Yeah, that's a really tough one because I think when you're on a campaign, you do whatever it takes to like come down off of the 12 hours worth of coffee drinking and Red Bull and 5-hour energy that you've just consumed. And typically that means going to a bar and kicking back with your friends and your campaign mates, and then going to bed, waking up and doing it all over again. I think with getting a little bit older and having paid a lot of dues, both on the campaign as well as the hillside, which again is not easy to begin with in terms of the level that you're playing at, but also the number of hours that you put into your workday, especially for representing the state as far away as Hawaii, which means that your cell phone is basically your leash for all the time. Because I was really looking for things that would allow me to be present, and surfing was one of those things. I grew up fairly athletic and artistic, and actually dropped a lot of that during the campaign life. And so I found that taking time off, even if it was just a week, which sounds luxurious in a lot of different ways, but is not enough time if you've gotten to a year and a half without any time off because you've been running nonstop on a campaign and running an office and building out a startup office. I think taking that time and actually finding the things that allow you to be present and not focused on what the next step is or what the next thing that you should do is in the list of 12 other things that you should do right now and the 20 things that you should do tomorrow is incredibly important, not just for your mental health. For me, I'm a pretty strong swimmer and I also love challenges. So surfing was the initial way into finding some balance. And nowadays, I only travel to surf, although I think I might be changing that a little bit in June when I go to hopefully a music festival. It is a different life. It is a great community of folks who only care about surfing. And in many ways, it allows me to unwind and not have to be the person, the political consultant or the political operative or the strategist. And it just allows me to be Betsy, the surfer. And that's been super, super helpful. I know other people do things like during the 2012 campaign, I would hand sew a sock monkey while I was on campaign calls so that I would just have something to do with my hands. It also had the other reason was my family does, long story short, my family has sock monkeys for each person. And anytime a new person joined the family, whether by marriage or by birth, we had to make a new sock monkey for them. So I would do that while I was on campaign calls so that I could think clearly and also make some really fun sock monkeys.
You heard it here, folks. Making sock monkeys really provides you some mental release. So, Betsy, thank you so much for joining us today on Candids. This conversation has been so helpful, I think, to provide our community as well as others the insight on, how to survive in this business, how to get into this business, and how to thrive. really in the campaign and public policy space as a woman of color and as an Asian American woman. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. And I'd be happy to join at any other time that works for you all.